What happened in a closed-door Republican conference meeting last Tuesday reportedly left Mitch McConnell visibly shaken, and the ripple effects of that confrontation are now reshaping the entire power structure of the GOP. According to multiple sources who were present in that room, the 79-year-old Kentucky senator found himself facing something he hasn't encountered in nearly 2 decades of leadership: open rebellion from within his own ranks. The details of what transpired behind those closed doors paint a picture of an institution in crisis where traditional hierarchies are collapsing and new power centers are emerging. To understand why this moment matters, you have to understand how the Senate Republican Conference has operated for the better part of the last 20 years. McConnell didn't just run meetings, he controlled them with the precision of a chess master. Agenda items were carefully curated. Speaking time was managed down to the minute. Dissent, when it occurred, was channeled through proper procedures and private conversations. The conference was his domain, and everyone understood the rules. But last Tuesday's meeting, which was supposed to be a routine discussion about upcoming legislative priorities, reportedly became something entirely different. Sources describe an atmosphere that was charged from the moment McConnell called the meeting to order. The usual deference was absent. The careful protocol that has governed these gatherings for years simply evaporated. What triggered this unprecedented confrontation appears to have been building for months. Multiple Republican senators have grown increasingly frustrated with what they view as McConnell's cautious approach to the party's direction. These aren't just the usual suspects, the firebrands, or the newcomers looking to make names for themselves. According to those familiar with the dynamics, the criticism came from senators who have traditionally been part of McConnell's inner circle. The specific catalyst, according to reports, was a discussion about the party's messaging strategy heading into the next election cycle. When McConnell outlined what sources describe as a measured institutional approach focused on traditional conservative policies, he was reportedly interrupted by multiple senators who challenged not just his strategy, but his authority to set that strategy unilaterally. Legal analysts who study Senate dynamics suggest that what we're witnessing is a fundamental shift in how power operates within the Republican conference. For years, McConnell's authority was unquestioned because it delivered results. He controlled the legislative calendar when Republicans were in the majority. He managed to confirm hundreds of conservative judges, and he maintained party unity even during tumultuous periods. But that track record, according to political observers, may no longer be enough to maintain his grip on power. The confrontation reportedly escalated when several senators questioned McConnell's recent decisions about resource allocation and candidate support in upcoming races. Sources describe a moment when the traditional decorum of the Senate conference room was completely abandoned. Voices were raised, accusations were made about out-of-touch leadership and institutional thinking that no longer serves the party's base. What makes this development particularly significant is the identity of the senators involved. These weren't just junior members expressing frustration. According to multiple reports, the challenge came from senators who chair important committees, who control significant fundraising operations, and who have their own substantial power bases within the party. When institutional figures of that caliber openly confront the leader, it signals a seismic shift in the balance of power. McConnell's reaction, as described by those present, was telling. Rather than immediately asserting his authority or attempting to restore order through parliamentary procedure, he reportedly listened in what sources called stunned silence. For a man who has built his career on controlling every aspect of these meetings, the loss of control was apparently visible and jarring. The implications of this confrontation extend far beyond one uncomfortable meeting. Political observers note that McConnell's power has always rested on 3 pillars: his mastery of Senate rules and procedures, his ability to raise and distribute money, and most critically, the respect and deference of his colleagues. If that third pillar is cracking, it changes everything about how the Republican Party operates in the Senate. Multiple sources suggest that the meeting didn't end with any resolution. There was no restoration of unity, no clearing of the air, no agreement to disagree respectfully. Instead, according to reports, the conference simply adjourned with tensions unresolved and fundamental questions about leadership hanging in the air. The silence that followed, described by one source as deafening, may be more telling than any formal challenge to McConnell's position. The timing of this internal crisis couldn't be more consequential for the Republican Party. With a presidential election approaching and control of the Senate potentially at stake, the party's most experienced institutional leader finds himself fighting to maintain control of his own conference. This isn't just about personality conflicts or policy disagreements. This is about the direction of the party and who gets to determine that direction. What happened in that conference room also reflects broader tensions within the Republican Party about its relationship with Trump and the MAGA movement. McConnell has long walked a careful line, supporting conservative policies while maintaining some distance from the former president's more controversial statements and actions. But sources suggest that this careful balance is no longer sustainable in the eyes of many of his colleagues. The senators who reportedly confronted McConnell appear to represent a new generation of Republican leadership that is less interested in institutional norms and more focused on aggressive political combat. They view McConnell's measured approach as a liability in an era where the party's base demands more confrontational tactics and rhetoric. According to political analysts, the fractures that emerged in Tuesday's meeting have been building for months. Behind the scenes, there have been quiet conversations about whether McConnell's leadership style is still effective in the current political environment. These discussions have reportedly intensified as Republicans look toward the challenges of the next election cycle. The financial implications of this leadership crisis cannot be overlooked. McConnell has long been one of the most effective fundraisers in Republican politics, with a network of donors who trust his judgment and strategic thinking. If his authority within the conference continues to erode, it could affect the party's ability to raise the money needed for competitive Senate races across the country. Sources close to the situation suggest that McConnell is now facing a choice that he has never had to confront during his long tenure as leader. He can either adapt his leadership style to accommodate the demands of his increasingly restless conference, or he can risk facing a formal challenge to his position. Neither option comes without significant costs. The broader implications for American politics are substantial. McConnell has been a stabilizing force within the Republican Party, someone who could channel the energy of various factions while maintaining institutional discipline. If that stabilizing influence is weakened or removed, it could lead to even greater volatility within the party, and by extension, within American politics as a whole. What makes this situation particularly complex is that there is no obvious successor waiting in the wings. The senators who reportedly challenged McConnell on Tuesday represent different factions and different approaches to leadership. Without a clear alternative, the party could find itself in a prolonged period of internal conflict that makes effective governance even more difficult. The reaction from Trump and his allies to reports of McConnell's weakened position has been notably restrained, which itself may be significant. In the past, any sign of vulnerability in McConnell's leadership would have prompted immediate attacks from Trump's camp. The relative silence suggests that even Trump's team recognizes the complexity of the situation and the potential dangers of a complete leadership vacuum. As this crisis continues to unfold, it's important to remember that institutional power in the Senate doesn't just disappear overnight. McConnell still controls significant levers of influence, and he has survived political challenges before. But the nature of Tuesday's confrontation suggests that this challenge may be different from anything he has faced previously. The question now is whether McConnell can find a way to rebuild the consensus that has kept him in power for so long, or whether the Republican Party is heading toward a period of leadership transition that could reshape its approach to governance and politics for years to come. The silence that reportedly followed Tuesday's meeting may be the sound of an era ending, but what comes next remains to be written.